Once again, just for the edification of people who may be watching this at home, this is a meeting to roll out to you, the general public, our plans to build a new McKinley school. We have presented this plan to the building committee. We've presented this plan to the city council. And now we are prepared to present this plan to you, the public, and many of you parents of children that will be attending the new McKinley school. Before I just say some very, very brief words, I would like to introduce some of the elected officials that are here with us this evening. Sitting here in the first row, City Councilor John Correggio, former Superintendent and School Committee Woman Carol Ty, School Committee Woman Donna Wood Pruitt, City Councilor Steve Reardon, City Councilor Charlie Patch, School Committee Man Michael Ferranti, School Committee Woman Stacy Rizzo, and I think that's it as far as elected officials go. We have been working diligently for probably close to a year now on our plans to build a new McKinley school. It's a promise that was made back around the year 2000 to complete this 5-school building program, to bring a certain level of education to every single student in the city. And this is the final school in our program. And, you know, it hasn't always gone easy for the city. We ran into some financial difficulties back in the mid-2000s and slowed our plans down a little, but here we are on the doorstep of finalizing and concluding our final school building. I want to, well, you know what, I'm going to let Dr. Dakin introduce the team that's here that's helped us along the way, but this has been a process, and it has not been an easy one. As you know, Revere is land poor, and so we had to come up with some very, very, very tough decisions in order to make this work. So by no means were any decisions that were made over the last year easy ones. They were very, very difficult ones, many that we agonized over for some period of time. But at the end of the day, the plan that we're presenting to you tonight is one that not only was the one that was approved by the school building committee, but also the recommended and selected plan by the Mass School Building Authority. So, you know, I feel confident in the decisions that we made that they are the right ones and will continue to be the right ones. So with that, I would like to introduce the chair of the school building committee, Dr. Paul Dakin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you folks for being here. Just in the form of history, this building was the 5th project in a series of buildings of the schools. You know, some may have thought that it should have been one of the first projects because of its age, but the projects up until now have added over 1,000 new seats in the district, which is why the timing and the cycle went like it was. And all the way back, just to clear up some confusion, all the way back then, the McKinley was intended to be built on the same site. And we had plans for swing space. We had plans to take care of educating the students continually while we built on that site. That was like 11 years or so ago. As time went on and the clock ticked through those 11 years, student enrollment grew to the point where even the original thought of the Department of Education to build this school upped its count from about 500 students to 690 students. So we are commissioned to build a much bigger school. And that number, 690, is not a Revere number. That's a calculation that comes out of the Department of Education looking at their methods on which they fund school buildings. Naturally, they don't want to fund a building more than the need of students to put in it, and they don't want to squeeze you in. So a lot of work went into getting a building at 690. and a strategic approach. Just to clear up some confusion, this has been very strategic. In fact, I think the committee and myself have been accused of not being strategic in it. I actually consider that a compliment, considering it's usually the other side that I'm usually accused of being way too strategic. But in this process of looking at this, it's changed. When the rules and regulations of Mass School Building changed 2 years ago, we had to start submitting a new statement of interest every year. So every year, about 10 or 15 hours of work went into redoing a statement of interest, explaining what the population was, explaining the need of the building. And as that submission went in and the size of the student population started to grow, the needs of the school started to change. And it started to get shaky, but still to the point where, even in the statement of interests, the argument was posed that we were going to be building on the same site. So all of a sudden, they approve a statement of interest. We're moving on in the process, and the consultants are brought on board to start now going into depth on what the idea was and try to crystallize, okay, how are we going to build out this building? So the plan actually started to develop when we looked at where can we build. And feasibility study from the department of MSBA causes us to have to look at all options. We had to look at building on the same site. We had to look at and study rehabbing the existing building. We had to present other options. We presented options that built at the stadium site and at Hill Park site. Even in the presentations, in the first rounds of presentations, my first option still was to build on the McKinley site. That was my first option. We're ending up recommending Hill Park because of the depth of the study. Hill Park's actually my third personal option. It now is really the first option after all of the facts are in, but it was the third option of Paul Dakin personally. Number one being, let's do it where it is, and here's how we would do it there with 690 students. Here's Hill Park and what it would do in 690, and here's the other option, which was the stadium. So how did we, in history, come to the point where, okay, it's at Hill Park. Why did we choose Hill Park? Well, the strategic work that went along was such that each of those studies needed to have a numeric next to it. It needed a number that had to actually be presented to the school building authority before they would fund anything. So we had to, as best we could at the time, present an argument for building a new school at the McKinley site, to building a new school at the stadium, and to build a new school at Hill Park. As we exercised those studies and the work that was needed, it became apparent that I had to shift off my first and second options, which were held in belief, building at Hill Park, not Hill Park, building at the existing site, even 11 years ago when the plan was written, 2 years ago when the statement of interest was upgraded, a year ago when the statement of interest was upgraded, and even starting, I had to personally move, and many of the committee members who were studying this had to move off that position of Hill Park. And purely, it would have been nice to tuck a school in there. Seemingly around the traffic world, it would have been nicer. But what drove us off that was the cost. The cost of building on the existing McKinley site is more expensive than the cost to build on Hill Park. And and the stadium site to build on was more than Hill Park. So what we got forced into was thinking about Hill Park because of the bottom line. Ultimately, a school estimating the cost of a building to fit 690 and those other things that had to be done around the area, whether it be at the current site of McKinley School by taking other properties, or at Hill Park by taking other properties, or at the stadium and replacing the stadium. So all of the fallout things that come with it, like replacing Hill Park, are all built in these costs that are spinning around in our head. Hill Park, even with the costs that will be recommended, is the cheaper option than was possible at McKinley. It's cheaper by about $4 million from McKinley. It's cheaper by about $10 million than building at the stadium site. So Paul Dakin, the person, Dakin, the building chair, had to pull back from what I thought for a good 12 years would be building on the McKinley site, mainly because of finances. We are building the school on a site that ends up being, for the taxpayer, the cheapest option, even with the extraneous costs of replacing Hill Park or looking at Fernwood Place, which came into the equation very late in the game when we were studying. We had this place laid out and started looking at traffic and parking. Late in the game, all of a sudden, the idea of Fernwood Place sticks up. And in fact, the architects really hadn't done a lot of work, and nobody did a lot of work thinking about that until we saw how constrained we were even on Hill Park. And that entered into what a late discussion has come about, very late in the process. Not even part of the original start of feasibility, but rather a reaction to seeing what parking was happening with, that late in the game comes the idea of Fernwood Place. So it ultimately came down to a choice because of dollars. It was driven by the cost. What's the best option for a taxpayer? And the option being presented on the existing site, the Hill Park, with the extraneous costs, is the cheapest option. And then there's a kicker to boot. What the community gets, what the city gets, is another asset in its pocket. The McKinley School has got to be worth $1 million or $2 million, potentially for city use or some other use, whatever. But that asset added to the $4 million means we're in an even better position building on Hill Park. So not only do we get the new school built cheaper, even with the other stuff we got to do, but we also have an asset still in our hands, a McKinley School that the city can think about what they want to do with. Keep it, use it, think of some way to market it. But it is another option. So there was a very strategic approach to this. I'm going to turn it over. We have consultants here. We have Drummond Roseanne Anderson as the architect firm. We have Collaborative Partners, who are the project management firm. And they're going to be here to answer questions. I'll weave in and out. We'll take some questions from folks. But I think the first part would best be for Scott to give his version of the history from the architect's point of view and how we did it, to go on top of the history of what we had to study and how strategic the process was and how comprehensive it was, and the fact that it was driven by the dollar. We could build on McKinley School site. We could do that. Do we want to pay $4 million for it? We could build on the stadium site. Do we want to pay $10 million for that? Or do we want to take what is the taxpayer's best option with the fallout and build on Hill Park? Thus far, the building committee has supported the issue for the taxpayer. Let's build a new school. We owe the community a new school, the community of McKinley students and parents. We owe the taxpayer the best work we can do. And the best work is that best value for the dollar and the cheapest option because of the way things felt. So this is Scott Wooden. Scott is the architect for the project. He's worked with us on other projects as well. If you've ever been in the Rumney Marsh or the Wayland School Complex out there, West Revere Complex, or the Paul Revere, you're talking about schools, some of which have received awards for what's happened with the bare minimum money as defined by the school building authority. We don't choose the dollar values. They tell us exactly what we're going to get square foot, and we have to use that to build the building. Anything else that goes becomes an extra, and there's really not extras that are patched in order to enhance the school. There's problems that end up resurging here. When we built Rumney, we had problems out in the back and some conduits under the ground that had to be replaced that were additional charges. But that's a benefit for the city because they would have had to been replaced ultimately anyway. So Scott, why don't you take over and give the history a bit from your perspective and bring them right up to date with the way the school is looking.
Well, I hope I'm not redundant at all, because you covered a lot of the preliminary approach to this project pretty comprehensively. When we first looked at the project from the design team standpoint, we were coming on to some work that had been started by collaborative partners where they looked at about 12 different properties around the city of Revere. They looked at them in regards to trying to evaluate their suitability for a new school project based on primarily the area, the wetland resources, the area in the city that they were located, et cetera, et cetera. So 12 sites were originally studied, and we narrowed it down very quickly to about maybe 6 or 7 that we were looking at, both in terms of whether that site could support a school or whether that site could possibly support fields that were displaced by a school project. Because certainly if we were building on the Hill Park site, we would need to displace the existing recreational facilities that are on that site. And if we were building on the Del Russo Stadium, we would need to replace the stadium somewhere. So when we first came on board, we quickly came to the conclusion that the Del Russo Stadium was the site to build on. We could get a nice 3-story building there, plenty of space for parking, serving the same catchment area. It would just dislocate the stadium, and we simply needed to find a location for that. Easy enough, right? Well, we probably went on a 3-week exercise and looked at a number of sites. I remember we looked at the DPW site, we looked at the Wonderland site. There were a lot of discussions about that, and we probably spent the most time looking if there was a way that we could reconfigure all the resources that were on the Rumney Marsh High School property to see if we could somehow fit a stadium there. And it required acquiring some properties. It required dislocating the fields in such a way that it required us to relocate the existing artificial turf field that was there. The baseball field had to move up to Ambrose Park at the north end of the site. The Ambrose field had to go over to Hill Park. I mean, it was just a snowball effect that as Paul pointed out, it ended up having about a $10 million price tag associated with it. So as much as we tried, the Del Russo Stadium site just ended up being infeasible and cost prohibitive. So then we went back and concentrated on either the existing McKinley site and the Hill Park site. And the 2 biggest disadvantages of the Hill Park site at that time were, number one, we obviously would have to find a place to dislocate the existing ball field and recreational resources to. And secondly was just the size of the site. It was so restrictive that we believed at the time, based on some very conceptual studies, that we'd have to have a 4-story building, which is less than ideal for an elementary school. So that wasn't a favorite site, so we looked at a number of different ways that we could manipulate the McKinley School site, adding on to the existing building, tearing down the building, building a larger building in its footprint. The 2 main problems there were, number one, we'd have to go through a significant acquisition of additional properties to make that property big enough to support the school as well as the parking. And number 2, where do we put the kids during the 2 years that the school is being constructed? We estimated about $2.5 million worth of rental costs for modulars, which again, that as compared to finding a place to put the ball field at Hill Park, the modulars and the acquisition of properties at the existing McKinley site made that one much more costly of an option. So when we looked at these, looking primarily at the McKinley School site, the Del Russo site, and the Hill Park site, as Dr. Dakin pointed out a minute ago, the Hill Park site emerged as the clear favorite. And so there, we know that that's the most cost-effective approach for the city. So now we sharpen our pencils and we start looking at the problems that we have. We need to explore the geotechnical aspects of the site. What's the subsurface material? What type of foundation is the building going to have? Number 2, are there significant drainage problems on the site? We had Niche Engineering was our civil engineer. They evaluated a number of the components in regards to the drainage. We would have to put in an underground drainage catchment area for storage on site of stormwater. The geotechnical information came back. We've done 2 series of borings on the site. We've established that we would have to have a type of a pile, not like we had at the Romney Marsh Academy, which were deep end-bearing piles, but something that's called a pressure-injected footing, which is something that stabilizes an area about 40 feet below the building so that the piles can rest on that strata. We've completed a comprehensive traffic study that I'll get into in a few more minutes when we look at the site plan. So effectively, during the feasibility study and during schematic design, we've completed a pretty significant series of engineering studies to determine that the site is feasible. We're not running into anything that's absolutely cost prohibitive that's driving this into being a less favored site than it currently is. And we've also looked at the massing of the building. We've been able to develop a floor plan that's been able to maintain the building on 3 floors, which is something that is very acceptable for this grade level of an elementary school. And I think we have an option that's coming into shape and like I said, doesn't present any unsurmountable obstacles. Okay, so if you like, I'm going to start to talk a little bit first about the site plan. We've brought some graphics along this evening of the site plan, floor plans, and some building elevations. I think we also have some massing studies. And I know Rick is in the back waiting for my cue that we're going to switch over the monitors to the graphics. We only have the site plan on a board this evening. The other graphics we just have on the electronic file. So I'm going to have to beg your pardon to ask you to face the monitors when we talk about the building plans and the elevation studies. So I'm going to try to stay close to the microphone here. The building as it's planned right now, when we started looking at this, we started looking at it up to the wall of the existing track stadium complex, saying that would be the site for the new school. But as we started looking at the Hill Park site, the city, the building committee, Mayor Rizzo, Superintendent Dakin, urged us to keep sight of this issue about the football field. And we started looking at, we continued to look at the high school site for a potential location for the stadium. And we started looking to see if, well, could we possibly allow enough room for the new stadium so that when renovations happen to Del Russo Stadium, we can elongate the stadium so that we can get a full regulation track around here, which is going to fit right into this spot. So when we started planning, we had up to this line, but we realized that there was a real value in allowing that area to sort of stay reserved so that the stadium could occupy that in the future, or hopefully even more present than that, when the Del Russo Stadium is redeveloped. So it's feasible, and it doesn't restrict us too much. We can stay on 3 stories. This is the 3-story structure. It's based on, as you can see, an L scheme. There's major entrances into the building at this point, as well as at this point on Park Avenue. There's about 60 parking spaces on the site proper, and about another 15 spaces in this area back here that I'll talk about in just a second. As you know, there's existing tennis courts and basketball courts that are currently in this location. This proposal suggests that ultimately, when the whole complex is built out, that this area back here in the northwest corner of the site would then be the home of the new basketball and new tennis courts. And this could also serve as a future hard surface playscape for the kids from the school. There's also a playground, a tot lot here at the north side of the building that'll have play structures that are appropriate for pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and first grade children. Until the stadium is built out, this area will serve as both a hard surface playscape and a grassy area, which will be a nice, suitable playground for the children. The older kids can possibly go back and use the courts. Once this field is built out, the recreational resources on the site will rely on the tot lot, this hard surface play, and there will be a small plaza just to the west side of the building along this edge. The circulation in and out of the, well, let me talk about this a little bit. This plan does assume some additional property acquisitions adjacent to the site. As I mentioned before, the original site that we planned on went up to the existing wall of the stadium. Okay, by allowing that area to remain undeveloped with either the building or parking, it chokes us a little bit in regards to the parking that's available on the site. It doesn't get us to the number of parking that we would need to accommodate all of the faculty and visitors that we would have on a daily basis. And it also restricts the amount of traffic flow on the site, and it makes it very dense for drop-off and pickup times. This, if we don't acquire some additional property back there for driveway space, drop-off edge, and parking, the net result is going to be that there's going to be more overflow onto Park Avenue and onto Fernwood. Okay, so when we looked at that, we felt that this was something that we wanted to put forth to the city as being an option because it has some very positive aspects to it and some positive results. It would require the acquisition of 3 properties along Fernwood Place. It would allow for that street to be opened up wider so that could become a 2-way street. So it would provide for both ingress and egress from the site, and it would also provide that very critical additional parking space that we need and additional drop-off edge. So the traffic patterns, I'm going to need to move away from the mic, but I'll talk as loud as I can. The traffic patterns primarily on the site are like this. From Fernwood Place, our primary, most of the students, and maybe Dr. Dagan can help me out with this, most of the students are from the south area, south of the building. Okay, so most people are coming north to get to the site. And the primary access to the site is going to be up Broadway, up Fernwood, and into the site. That's one. Secondly, up Broadway, up Park, and into the site. And a third that will probably emerge, not necessarily our plan, but it's something that's probably going to happen, is people are going to come down Foster, right here, and turn left onto Park and drop off along this edge, probably overlapping the stadium a little bit. Now those kids will go walk along this sidewalk, which is very wide, and there is a major entrance into this building. Now, there's a lot that we'll have to continue to discuss in terms of traffic safety, where to put patrolmen, where to put crossing guards, et cetera, where to put crosswalks. But we see this as being a major junction and a major drop-off edge here, which helps with reducing the amount of cars that are coming onto the site. So, in regards to these 2 traffic patterns, if you come in here from Fernwood, you can drop off right here, turn around, come right back out to Fernwood, and turn, we would make this a 2-way. We would propose to make this a 2-way up to this point. So when you discharge from the site, you can either go back toward Broadway or left onto Fernwood. You could also come in this way, loop around the island. All of this here is drop-off edge, but say you have a pre-kindergarten student that you want to hand right off to the principal, you would come right around to the front, drop off right along this edge. Then you can come through the site. You can either come out to Park. It'll be right turn only on the Park because this queues up quite a bit in the morning here, discharging onto Broadway. Or you can loop around here and come back out Fernwood. Okay, so that'll be the primary traffic patterns from Fernwood. And from Park, if you come onto the site from Park, you would most likely come right around the loop, engage with the main drop-off plaza right here, come back out, and you can either come out Park or come back out Fernwood. As I mentioned, there's all the kids that are being dropped off will come right along this plaza area here, right into the main plaza and into the main entrance. There's also a main entrance here from Park. They all come into a common lobby where the administration office is, and I'll show you that on the plan in just a minute. So there's very good supervision and surveillance of both of the entry points into the building from that one vantage point of the office. The only other thing I wanted to point out on the site plan was that this back here is the service area. This is where we'll be receiving shipments. The dumpster will be back there. There'll be a generator and a transformer. All of them will be screened. We'll put some sort of an acoustical enclosure around the generator. Did I cover everything on the site plan? I'd like to, if we can come back with any questions or comments on the site plan. I'd like to see if we could advance to the floor plans. I'm just going to run through them real quick. I won't get into the detail of where all the IDF closets are and the mop sinks and all that, but just give you a general idea how the building's organized. We think it's working pretty well. There we go. So, yeah, it's a little bit muddier than I was hoping we'd see it, but if I can, let me direct your attention to the middle part of the plan where we see that large yellow area. The yellow indicates all of the circulation area and lobby space. So if you enter from, and just pan up a little bit on that, Jim, if you can. So if you enter in at the main entrance there, you come into a very generous lobby with the administration area on your left-hand side. That's the second floor. Okay, so here we are back at the first floor. So when you enter in at the main lobby, the larger yellow area in the center of the plan, straight ahead of you is the cafeteria. There's lots of glass looking into the cafeteria, looking out into the fields. Basically organized around the cafeteria to the north, we have our shipping and receiving area, boiler room. To the right-hand side of that north wing are the 3 pre-kindergarten classrooms. Very nice location for those. They're right next to the drop-off area. We could possibly have doors that open right into those so that the teacher could actually go out and engage with the parents as they're dropping off the children. The administration area is right in the center of that plan, adjacent to the lobby and adjacent to both entrances from the interior of the site and Park Street. And then the whole wing to the right there on the plan are all of our kindergarten and first grade classrooms on the first floor. There's major stair towers at either end of that, and there's also a major stair tower to the bottom left-hand corner of the plan, which is the main discharge from the gymnasium, which is on the second floor. Let's advance to the second floor plan, Jim. The gymnasium, this is kind of a key component of our strategy for this site, is to reduce the building footprint on the site. We wanted to stack as much of the program area as we could, and what we did is we found a way that we could put the gymnasium over the cafeteria. It's a little bit of an unorthodox strategy. We did it at West Revere. It worked great over there. The minor problem with this, but it's not insurmountable, is that you've got to allow for a lot of people in that gymnasium to find a way down to the ground in the event of an emergency, and that's why we introduced that large stair directly to the bottom left-hand corner of the gymnasium. It's intended that both the gym and the CAF on the first and second floors have a lot of glass in them so that from the lobby space and from the corridors you can see into those spaces as well as see out into what hopefully will be the new Della Russo Stadium. Give a little bit of soft greenscape to an otherwise urban setting. Again, most of the other spaces, the only other non-classroom space on the second floor, if you look just to the right-hand side of the gymnasium, on that inside corner in the plan, is the media center library. Again, a lot of glass, very transparent, very open, has a very prominent a prominent position in the plan. As you come into the building, into the main entrance, you're looking up through the glass into the library, nice fixtures, kids sitting in soft seating, much like the strategy we employed at the Romney Marsh Academy. Let's just go to the third floor, Jim. So this stacks neatly on the first and second floor. On the third floor, just classrooms. The gymnasium volume, of course, goes all the way up. We can probably go right on to the building elevations. So this elevation is kind of a two-piece elevation. The one on the bottom connects to the one on the top. And the materials are basically masonry, terracotta, which is a clay masonry type of product that's a rain screen. There's lots of windows and lots of glass around the entry. So there's a very different feeling between the classroom wing, which has sort of ribbon windows, and the terracotta, to the gymnasium volume, which you see on the bottom left, as well as the entry into the building. Very transparent, a lot of curtain wall, a lot of glass. We'll use sun shading devices and interior light shelves to cut down some of the glare. We'll specify a particular glass that reduces the amount of solar gain that we have through that exposure. We can control those things now with some material strategies. But this openness of these areas is going to do wonderful things for creating terrific monumental spaces, having a real connection between the interior and exterior of the building. Let's go to the next one, Jim. And this would be the elevation. The one on the top is the elevation looking from the driveway in from Park Avenue. So you see the classroom wing on the left-hand side, and then beyond you see the sort of the north wing of the L, as well as the library projection. Jim, can you use your cursor to point to where the library volume is? That area right there is where the library is. So as I mentioned before, as you can envision, when you're walking into the building, you're looking up and the library is right there over your head. A lot of glass. You can connect right in with the light fixtures and the kids that are sitting up there. It'll be very dynamic and I think engaging. And then the bottom elevation is what you would see from Della Russo Stadium. And as we pointed out before, on the bottom you see the glass going into the cafeteria. On the top, surrounded by that white surround of some material, there would be the glass curtain wall of the gymnasium. So do we have the massing studies, Jim? Do we have a couple of massing? So a few views from Park Avenue. This one, as you're approaching the site from Broadway, this is the driveway in the foreground, and we use glass in the design to sort of express some of the specialty spaces, like the gymnasium. In this case, this corner has volumes like the art room. What else is in those spaces, Jim? There's an art room on one floor, a computer lab. And then once you pass those specialty spaces, it transitions to a different type of vocabulary with the masonry and the terracotta. Do we have another view there, Jim? So this one is looking from the, is this the opposite way, Jim? Okay. Okay. So this is what we were describing would be one of the major drop-off edges is from this point and back toward the picture plane where kids could be dropped off. They could walk past the gymnasium, the glass of the gymnasium stair, and into that main entrance just beyond the phone pole. That will be probably an equal main entrance to the one that's on the interior part of the site. And that shows that entry volume again from a slightly more eastern view. Picture with the McKinley, existing McKinley school in the foreground and the new school in the background. You probably won't see that view very much, but if you're going by on a hang glider, you know, take a shot. So that is kind of an overview. Anyone, do you think there's anything that I've skipped over that's we want to touch upon? I'm certainly, you know, the real idea behind these community workshops is, or community presentations is to try to get some input. You know, we're at schematic design. We've kind of established what we think are the best sort of ground rules for going forward with the project, but we've got some of our experts are here. Christine Ketchis from Niche Engineering. She's our engineer, our traffic engineer. Doug Morris from Warner Larson. He's our site designer and also very savvy about all of the civil engineering aspects. I've been working with Doug. Doug worked on the West Revere School and on the Paul Revere School and on Remy Marsh. Yeah. So you know, we're certainly pretty well equipped to answer any of your questions and hopefully settle any concerns that you have in regards to the project. But we're also very interested in hearing input and ways that you think that we might be able to make this project better. So, yes.
The major question is Broadway. The major problem with traffic because you got elected school, you got traffic coming out from that section, and then McKinley. Will there be some reconstruction or redesign of signal equipment in the area there where the fire station is?
Repeat the questions for the tape.
Okay, well, I think that the question was, will there be any upgrades of the signalization on Broadway at the junctures of probably, I think the only signal there is at Park. And then when you turn, there's also a signal from the road that discharges there, Central Ave, from Central Ave. And you want to address that? That's great.
The only signal improvements that we foresee is there is one recommendation to make Yeaman Street a two-way. If that occurs, that'll affect the movement onto Broadway from Yeaman Street. So that timing of that signal will have to be addressed. But that movement will also reduce the movement from Park Avenue onto Broadway because vehicles now would come down Yeaman rather than congest that intersection at Park and Broadway. So that's the only one I foresee. But that right now is just a recommendation that we're looking at. We're not sure if we're going to follow through on that. So at this point, unless that occurs, there won't be any adjustments to the timing of the signals on Broadway.
If you do make Eaton Street two ways, and I know you're just talking about it, you're going to have to take off half that side.
That's right. Right now, it's a neck down at Park and Yeaman that was designed when we did the Park Ave improvement project. That would the geometry of that intersection would have to be changed to widen the throat of that intersection. No, that you would have to be reduced to parking on one side also. Yeah, to make that a two-way.
Frank, listen, we're just talking about making it a two-way street from the entry to the school back down to Broadway. Is that not the case? Or are we talking about making it two-way all the way?
Just from the entry to the site.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
I have several.
Sure.
You mind if I come up?
Absolutely.
I'm Counselor Charlie Patch, Ward 6 Counselor. It's hard. I feel there's questions that have to be asked, and it's hard for me to. I feel that I have to do it, and I have agreed with Superintendent Dakin and Mayor Rizzo and just about everything that's going on with the school for my 5 years as a counselor. But I've had problems with this right from the start. In August 7th they had a meeting to vote on which option to use. They gave a sheet out which had several options, and I didn't feel at the time, I was the only one that spoke out against the Hill Park site for being the option to be chosen. I grew up in that area. My mother's side, my Sicilian immigrated from Sicily, lived on Alston Street, and my Irish grandmother, we grew up as a family on Victoria Street and lived in this area. So it means a lot to me, even though for 40 years I've been living in Ward 6. I grew up in that park, but I have no, I'm more concerned now about the parents that the kids are going to go to this school. So when I questioned why it wasn't being built on the McKinley site, I was told at the time at that meeting in August that it would have been an ugly building. It was sidewalk to sidewalk. The price had several parcels of land acquisitions in the price. So I asked, why don't they take some more parcels? And they said there was no more money. What they're doing here at Hill Park is they're putting it right on the sidewalk. Now they got money to take property up here. This road here that they're saying going in and out is really not even a public street. It's the MBTA has a right of way. So you got buses that are going to be used coming down Park Ave using that. I think it's a public safety problem. I think the whole traffic situation, the intersection of Park Ave and Broadway, as you know, if you grew up here in Revere, you avoid it now. So you can imagine what they put a 700-student school here, right at the corner of it. It's going to be a gridlock. It's going to be a nightmare. You're going to twice a day. You're going to have traffic like, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I want to be able to say they're probably going to build this school. I know that, and I'll support Superintendent Dakin and Mayor Rizzo if that develops. But like I say, there are questions that have to be answered. You're going to have such a traffic gridlock with 700 students, which they didn't tell you is that in order to get the school built here, to get the okay from the state, they have to redistrict the Whalen and Lincoln schools. So not all the traffic's going to be coming from the south. Now it's going to be coming from the north. So that's more traffic. What else I got here? And they say I got some sentimental thing about Hill Park because I played there as a kid and I played as an adult. But I will never play in Hill Park again. So it's your kids that are going to be playing there. Whatever happened to Save the Green the green space, save the parks. I'm a strong believer in that. And I also want to mention, I mentioned the easeway, and this is going to, they're talking about using this easement as, it's going to be a traffic nightmare. People dropping off kids in buses, MBTA buses. It just doesn't make sense to me. You know, and now, as a counselor, my biggest concern is the taxpayer. I am also a taxpayer. I got 2 kids that got bought houses in Revere. They're taxpayers, raising families. We, as a counselor, have to pay the bill. We have to vote on the bill, and I just don't. We don't get no figures. All of a sudden now, they never had at the meeting on August 7th. They had no money to take land. They're talking about taking 3 or 4 houses. What about in my ward that I represent, St. Mary's Park? They're talking about putting Hill Park down there. It's a swampy land, if you know, or if anybody's been down there. And they're going to rearrange the ballparks, and how much money is that going to cost? And they're talking about now, the reason they're not building it on the old site is it's going to be an administrative building. Where's that money going to come to refurnish furnish that? I mean, there's a lot of questions, but we're not getting any answers as far as money. So I don't know how it got to this point where this site's already been picked. When the ballpark, and back at St. Mary's, we don't even own that property. So again, you know, there's a lot of questions, but you know, I'm going to support the parents and the kids of the McKinley school. I know you need a school, you know, but I want some answers. I'm not going to be the one up there, sitting up there, have to vote to pay the bill. Your money. It's going to be your money. So hopefully, you know, over the next few months, we can get some answers. And what this, I don't know where the young lady is that did the traffic plan, but you have to live here to really know what a nightmare that area is as far as traffic without a school. And it just ain't going to work. But hopefully, if it does develop, maybe I'll be proven wrong. But at least I had my say, and hopefully we can get something work done here. Thank you.
I got a couple of comments for him. First of all, I want everybody to understand something. This is not an ideal situation. It never would be, never could be. By the way, I'm Ward 4 City Councilor Steve Reardon. It never could be. We were up against significant roadblocks finding a site for this school. I would remind Councilor Patch that it came down to 5 separate options, 3 of which were the actual McKinley site. He's talking about no figures. Well, frankly, we have figures, and the figures have been published, and the figures have been known to everybody. Option A, which was rebuilding the school, option A, let's start with option B. Renovation and addition would require, renovation and addition of the school as it stands, all right? That option was determined to cost about $43.1 million with an estimated share of Revere of $11.6 million. Now, no one knows what it's going to cost dollar for dollar, but these estimates have been there since at least this summer. New construction of the existing, on the McKinley site, in addition to being a huge issue with finding space and disrupting the entire school system, the figures are there. The option C was $40.9 million. with an estimated reverse share of $11.9 million. Okay? That is the estimate. It's not a number that we can put our fingers on, absolutely, but it's a good faith estimate that these people who have worked well over a year now into this system have come up with. Harry Delarusso, option D, $45.6 million, reverse share $14.3 million. These are the estimated costs. The new McKinley School has an estimated cost of $41.7 million with reverse share at $9.6 million. This is what Dr. Dakin was referring to at the beginning. These figures have been developed. We don't not know what it's going to cost generally. We don't know specifically, and we won't until the final bill is in. There's no two ways about it. No matter what we do, we could never find that out. So those factors have been considered in this proposal, and we can. The reason the McKinley site was picked because A, it's the most cost-effective, B, it's the best school that we can put together. Now, there are issues. There are traffic issues. I suggest to you that one of the worst traffic issues in this city right now is in front of the present McKinley School on Yeaman Street. Try going down there in the morning and the afternoon. One single entrance, okay? People fighting for parking spaces, literally fighting at times for parking spaces, because I've seen it, and I'm sure all of you have seen it. One entrance to that school. What's proposed here to alleviate that is three entrances to the building and a drop-off area right here. We're spreading this traffic around. It's not going to be driving down Route 1 at 3 o'clock in the morning with no cars around you. It never will be. The traffic in Revere is a very difficult thing. We have a school we need to build. We have a site that it's most feasible on, and we have a plan to deal with the traffic. No one can say that you're going to be able to get down Broadway in 3 minutes on a Wednesday morning in the middle of the school year. You can't now anyway, okay? But at least this plan spreads it all out and avoids what we have here, which is a catastrophe. So we're trading a catastrophe for something that's maybe a little difficult at times. We don't know yet. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But this is what we need to, we've needed to develop this plan that works the best for our city, not that worked perfectly for our city, and it never will. Now, hopefully, we won't have to take too many buildings other than what we've already planned to do. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. It's yet to be determined, okay? How this is going to work best is yet to be determined. We haven't got 60 acres in the middle of the country someplace where we can just build a school and say, look at all the parking we got, look at all the fields we got. We just don't have that. This is the best option. This has been well over a year of meetings and studies and everything that we've been able to do, and honestly, I believe this is the best option. What I'd like to hear from is the people who live on Fernwood Street and Fernwood Place to talk about this a little bit and see how you feel about it. Because, frankly, and I'll give you one more thing. I don't know, and you know, I do real estate law, and I just don't know anybody's property who would not be enhanced by having this type of school in their neighborhood. It absolutely is going to increase the property values of the, despite some traffic issues, of the people on Fernwood Street in this area. It's a brand new school. When you go to sell your house, the first thing your real estate agent is going to say is, right near the school, right near a brand new school. And, well, you don't think so.
We have a neighborhood. We have a neighborhood here. That'd be a nightmare for us.
Well,
We don't want that.
it's,
So the reality is, you could never tell us, maybe other than the Krasnoffs, because they're a little bit on the side, but my home, and my husband, and Carlos Burgos. You could not tell us that would enhance
That would be a nightmare more than it
We
is
could not
now.
come down our street. That's a private way. We don't get shovels, we don't get
We get nothing.
sidewalks.
It's a private
We
place.
park wherever we want. With our homes there, there's no way you could come down that
There's
street.
no way.
And that would enhance
You
our.
never get out of my driveway. I'll get
That's
in.
just like off the charts
crazy.
talk. Have
We
you
have to,
come
we
down
have to, I
there?
would sell.
I hope you know not talking about the parcels that you have extra off over there.
I don't know where that part of the situation is going.
I'm a little concerned because I sent you an email. You know, we're in the
Nobody's
neighborhood.
concerned about the people that live there, it's all about the school.
It's about, we get that it's a school.
I love the school, that'd be great, but I wouldn't stay there.
You are our councilman. No one speaks to us. Now we see our
we're the
house
second
on one
hand.
side with the houses gone, which by all means, I told Dr. Dakin, I will do everything in my power and I'll bring in the Mass Safety Commissioner, because you're not going down Fernwood Place with our homes there. It's just not going to happen. So that conversation about it's going to enhance everybody's property, I don't know whose property is getting enhanced, and I hope you're not talking about leaving us there.
I'm sorry.
And I'm done.
Well, you know something? It's not going to be good for everybody. There's no doubt about it. It's not going to be, at least not at the outset. There's going to be construction issues.
Came to me, I sent you an email, I had to show up in Dr. Dakin's office, and I feel like we're just being left out in the cold.
Well, that's why this is why you're here. And this plan has been the subject of public meetings.
By saying it, how could anybody living in that neighborhood? Are you trying to say that maybe it might be good for Mario, me, and my husband and Carlos to stay there in that? There can't even possibly be
I'd be happy if you took all the houses
I'd never get out of
and give us what we want.
Mario would never
Well,
get out of his house.
you know something? That may end up happening. We're not. This is not a completed plan at all. This. Well, all right then. If it.
They asking for jackets.
I know. I get that you're doing this. All I'm trying to say is that comment. You're talking about us. You're trying
Can only listen to one person at a time. Well, the
Sure. These properties are the properties. These properties are the properties that are in the area.
It's better for us to walk the kids, no problem with the traffic. I live across the street as well, so.
Okay.
What is the problem?
Well, to address the issue of the folks that are here, you're in the properties that we're proposing to take because it's understood how difficult it would be on you, and add to that, it makes the project happening better. So in essence, in my opinion, it's a win-win. You don't want to live next to a school, even if it was a one-way in, which we would have to do. I think the chief would mandate we have to come through.
There's no way on God's green earth people could get out. Mario and his wife could not get out of their house.
No, there could not be two ways. It could not be two ways. But understand, the plan we're presenting is in harmony with what you're thinking. We take the houses.
I mean, unfortunately, you know how I feel that I wasn't even answered when I walked to my own councilman. I had to show up at your door to get any kind of an answer.
And I gave you as best I could because, and I gave you as best I could. And what we will do, because it's beyond the jurisdiction of me as superintendent or me as chair of the building committee, to talk about the purchasing of the lands. What I will do is make sure and talk to the mayor that he gets a meeting with you folks specifically about the property acquisition suggestion. And that will give you an audience with the person that can answer that question for you. Because I can't answer it. It's not in my purview as building chair to answer it. But I promise you I'll get you access to those answers, okay? Okay. No, it will certainly, I can promise that I will bring to the mayor the suggestion to meet with you even before the holidays, okay? Okay.
My life is in limbo, and I see myself taken off of there, and then I'm hearing statements about, oh, it's going to enhance. Does it be my property? You just turn it people on Fernwood?
No, I think the intention of the council was that if this plan all came into being, namely with the taking of those three properties there on Fernwood Place, that it would enhance the others. I think that was the intention of his comment. I can't speak for him, but I think that was the intention. Well, because this is exactly what that forum is from, and the communication out, because, again, the building committee can only make recommendations. It's up to the city whether they want to go down that route to do that. So we've been pushing, I've been mentioning Fernwood Place and Fernwood Ave for a long time after it started to look like we were in this area, but without the jurisdiction to make those decisions, any conversation that I would have to somebody would have been out of my authority as building chair. But I will promise you I'll get that audience. If I can go back to Mr. Patch. Mr. Patch, the bottom line is $4 million. If the estimates had a $42 million building and the others were 46 and 52, and it ends up being that the building is 44, the other one would have been 48 and 54. So there's about a $4 million swing, and as time goes on, that building cost naturally gets inflated and goes up. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up. But if it goes up for the cost of building it on Hill Park, it would have gone up for the cost of building it on the existing site proportionately, or the other site. So we took with best knowledge what we knew as the cheapest possible plan. Yes, traffic is brutal. Yes, traffic will be brutal. And I would suggest that if we ever could have put it on the McKinley, although we can't because it's more money, that the intersection in front of City Hall would have been brutal. So brutal is there when we're going to move 690 kids into the school rather than, how many do you have now, Mr. Mosher? 470. You're going from 470 to 690. I'm telling you, either of the intersections, the light right out in front of this building or the light at Park Ave, regardless of where you put this school, we have to serve 690 kids. And that's not our number, remember. The state said you need a school for 690 kids. We're just growing. So there's going to be a problem. We're going to be bringing in more than 100 more kids, well over 100 more kids into the area. And I would say Yeaman Street would have been real challenged. Foster Street would have been real challenged with the lumber trucks there. And the City Hall light would have been challenged. And in fact, with it at Park Ave, if they can do some work with Yeaman, the way things can flow out of Fernwood and in and around Fernwood might be the best option. That traffic study, if Mr. Patch, if you'd like it, is about 80-something pages long. I can make sure you get a copy. They had counters out there. They studied it, and the 80 pages of research is easily at your disposal. You mentioned the redistricting plan. There's no redistricting plan required by this. There's a suggestion of, if the need comes, that we should consider what's called buffer districting. But that's if it was needed, and that's the district's choice. Buffer zone. Redistricting is not a requirement of this plan. It's not a requirement. The MBTA spot that you said that they own, I'm pretty sure, and Frank can address, or the chief can address this, that piece of roadway is owned by the city. There's a leniency for the MBTA to use it, and the MBTA owns a piece of land down towards Broadway on the side, but that entrance piece that we're talking about, I'm pretty sure is city-owned. Frank, is that right? City right-of-way, the MBTA has. Okay. The MBTA has an easement on the city's right-of-way. Refurbishing the old McKinley. If that stays, if the city decides that they want to keep that building, maybe they're going to decide that they want to get rid of it. But it's probably an asset that's used. It would be, in my opinion, if we, the superintendent's office, had to go there because of the increased numbers of the high school, we would have had to rent for about $250,000 somewhere to put my office space. We need 7,000, 8,000 square feet of office space. Would have cost us a pretty penny. Instead of renting space, it would be good for the taxpayer that we put that kind of money into the McKinley, slowly rehabbing it over time, rather than give it to some rental property where the city gets nothing in the end. So that asset of the old McKinley can be something that's addressed down the line. Maybe it's decided that the building should be gone off and sold. I would suggest that it is a community asset that would probably be better, especially where we have to get out of the superintendent's office to make space for high school students. So we have to go somewhere. It might be logical to go there. And I know the City Hall, you know, just walking around this building, how crowded it is, and how they're into the building next door, the Legion building. Office space is probably good there. And why rent when you could have a place that you pour those dollars to fix. So, I mean, I think the use of that building is in wisdom and strategic in thinking of the future of how things are used. The strategy here run deep, and the thought runs deep. And I understand your point here, and we'll try to get to that. But why don't we see if there's anyone else? Question on any other point or comment? Councilor.
On the traffic study, I'd like a copy of it, but
Sure.
was it done in consultation with Revere Police or with our traffic division?
We'll let the traffic people answer that.
Hi, Christine Ketches with Niche Engineering. I did the traffic study. I did meet with the police department, and I believe it was with the safety officer. And I did have about a half-hour discussion with him about his thoughts on the school. He said it absolutely is a traffic issue. His big suggestion actually was to turn Foster or Yeamans into a one-way in the other direction to alleviate that congestion. And this also kind of touches upon the point on Broadway. I don't live in Revere. I've been told by many people if I did, I'd truly understand. But I have driven through here in rush hour a few times on my trips to the site, and it is a mess. And I think one of our goals by doing the one-way out onto Park and trying to get most of the people to enter into the site from Fernwood is to alleviate those left-hand turns that you would normally anticipate at Park. So we're trying to do everything that we can to get it off of Broadway and off of those pinch points on Broadway to kind of disperse everything.
And I guess another question I have is on MBTA buses. I know taking that left turn onto Park. Has there been any thought of maybe working with the MBTA to figure out a way around that? Because I know even now with a very newly popular restaurant on the corner, that seeing buses take that left turn, it gets a little hairy.
I've seen them make that left-hand turn.
We have 700 kids coming out of school, and you have a bus taking that left turn.
I will tell you, we did traffic counts actually at this intersection, which is going to be the side driveway. And so I actually do have the exact number of buses that come out we did them during the peak morning from 7 to 9 a.m. and we did it from 1:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon to capture that school release kind of peak period. In the morning, not a single MBTA bus went through that route. Obviously, the bus times and routes, I'm sure, can change. I have no power over that. But I will tell you, in the morning there were none, and in the afternoon from 1:30 to 3:30 at that intersection, there was a total of 5 buses that came through, and it actually was mostly coming from the MBTA access. I believe there was only one left-hand turn into it. I have seen those buses make that turn. It's the MBTA access. It is a concern, and one of the recommendations of the traffic study is we understand that we can't completely close this access. Right there. If we could, we would. But one of the recommendations of the study is through police enforcement or school enforcement, it really needs to be discouraged from parents trying to use that MBTA access. That, leave it for the buses and just try to get the parents out right onto Park Ave or onto Fernwood to kind of alleviate that cross congestion.
As far as my question is about Fernwood Place,
Mm-hmm.
is there a way to leave that alone and redirect the traffic, some other alternate, rather than get involved with Fernwood Place of taking the property and just leave it as it is?
I can't speak entirely to that, but I believe the biggest force between the acquisitions was to get more parking onto the site, because parking is a big concern of a school, that number with staff. And well, Scott can answer that.
Don't go too far, because I think it is partially a traffic issue too. Is that if we don't acquire these properties, this and if you even go so far as to keep this closed off here and not address this at all, even have a driveway in or out, you would be taking 100% of your traffic in this way, and first of all, you're about 20 parking spaces too short based on what we plan the capacity to be. But secondly, it's a huge burden on this intersection and on this single route to have all of that traffic coming in here, contending with any specialists who are coming into the school, teachers coming in and out, and the parents dropping off. By having this additional connection back here, and especially, you know, the nicest feature of this is having this quick drop-off turnaround right here, where those cars don't even have to enter into the site. So it's both parking and the site circulation on a day-to-day basis.
How about utilizing some of the staff, the teachers, and have them park at the original McKinley School, which is right around the corner?
Well,
Utilize that.
if the existing McKinley School is going to be serving some other, you know that there's very little parking available at the
15
existing
spaces.
McKinley School. How much is it? 15?
There's only 15 legal parking spaces. I know right now you park a lot more out back there. I've been there during the day, but it's, I mean, you're parking 4 deep that way.
Given that that's going to be 45,000 square feet, 50,000 square feet of some sort of office space or some other use, it's certainly going to need at least that much parking. Right, but I'm just saying for the people who say it was converted to administrative offices and the superintendent's office, they would need every bit of that existing parking space plus some to be able to accommodate their new use.
Can I say one other thing? Just one other comment about the Fernwood Place. Fernwood Place is really the most direct route for people to get back onto Broadway going southbound. I know that I have a map of the towns that the streets that McKinley School services, and the bulk of them are to the south, which means that most of these trips are coming from and going back to south of the school. If there is not that Fernwood Place exit and, you know, that access back onto Broadway, 100% of the vehicles will be coming out onto Park Ave and taking a right. And if they can't go down Foster and they can't go down Yeamans, you're going all over Revere to get back to Broadway. There's really no direct route from there. No, and they might end up looping back through the neighborhood and just going back onto.
Michael?
I have a question. Have we ever done a traffic survey how the existing cars go into the McKinley School?
As part of our study, I actually personally stood in front of the McKinley School and counted the cars that dropped off and picked up students. That's actually how we did our projections of the future trips that could be expected. We figured out a rate based on what we observed at the school right now of parents dropping off and picking up and faculty arriving. And we figured out a rate from that.
Do you have any idea what the number is?
Yes, I can tell you. Hold on one second, please.
Do you have a guess, Michael? I'm just killing time while she's looking it up.
It's in the report.
It is in the report. It's actually not, we do everything by peak hour. This is actually over the entire course of dropping off and picking up, which is over about an hour and a half. And it was 160 parents in the morning and 27 faculty in that time. A lot of the faculty gets there before the peak, and then in the afternoon it was 133 parent trips in and out, and then some faculty as well.
Okay, next. Any other topic before we close down? Okay, so I have a few takeaways from here. I'm going to be getting some traffic reports for some folks that requested them. I'm going to be approaching the mayor for the residents of Fernwood Place, try to get you in there as soon as his schedule allows. We have some takeaways in the form of, you know, I'm getting a strong feeling that, you know, this is, you're going to have a miserable life if you're still living there. So take my house. So that's, I think, am I concluding that that's the message that I should be taking away with? Yeah. Okay. All right. From all three of the houses. And it actually enhances. That becomes a decision. The building committee only makes recommendations to these things. The councilors that are here now and are hearing you are, you know, with the mayor have, you know, that's their domain. We can study. We can be strategic about the way we plan things, which we've been very much doing, and the way we present them. And if you need or have any questions, you've been to my office, just get me again if you need it. And anyone else, everybody else, thank you for being here.